Respective schools should emphasize classical thought as their subject matter. Perennialists believe that schools should teach disciplined knowledge through the traditional subjects of history, language, mathematics, science, and the arts. They place particular emphasis on literature and humanities, believing that these subjects provide a greater insight to the human condition. Although this view of the curriculum is evident in many areas of education, its most complete form is known as the Great Books approach, as developed by Robert Maynard Hutchins, who was President and Chancellor. We're going to flip the page now to 284. President and Chancellor of Chicago throughout the 1930s and 1940s, and the late Mortimer Adler, a professor at the University of Chicago during the same time period. The Great Books, which constitute a shelf of volumes stretching from Homer's Iliad to Albert Einstein's On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies, are perennialist ideal curriculum and perennialist-oriented high school curricula. Broader and more modern selection of works is included, although the emphasis remains on the intellectual richness of the material. For perennialists, in the early years of schooling and development of the intellect is best achieved through a teacher-directed instructional approach that develops the fundamental skills needed for later learning. Socratic dialogue is then used to help mature learners question and examine their beliefs, enabling them to move closer to the truth. Since the early 1990s, a controversy has arisen over the content of the perennialist literature, history, and philosophy courses. Scholars and students have criticized colleges and high schools for promoting Eurocentric view of knowledge and culture that ignores the contributions of everyone except dead white male writers and thinkers. They urge adoption of a more inclusive curriculum, that is, one that gives greater attention to women, minorities, and members of African, Asian, Hispanic, and Islamic culture. Although some perceive this moment to be a direct attack on the perennialist curriculum, others see it as a natural and useful extension of the perennialist search for the best of the world's wisdom. One perennialist friend of ours who welcomes this new approach suggests, quote, "Sure, students should know about Islamic literature and Eastern philosophy, but they should first get to know their own neighborhood, Western culture," end quote. Education is of great importance to perennialists, but it is an education that is rigorous and demanding. Perennialists insist that education is preparation for life, and therefore believe that it should not attempt to imitate life for lifelike. Students should engage in a rigorous examination of classics, mostly ancient, but some modern, to discover the timeless wisdom embodied in this literature rather than focusing on knowledge that might seem personally meaningful. In summary, the perennialist view that through disciplined study of the great works, a person acquires reasoning skills and mastery of the important ideas of human history. The view leans heavily on the authority of the collective wisdom of the past and looks traditionally taught to guide us in the present. As such, we're going to go to the top of 285. As such, curriculum is structured and clearly defined. Perennialists also see education as protecting and conserving the best thought from the past. In this sense, they favor a very traditional and conservative view of education. The following case study presents a view of a more or less typical perennialist teacher. We're going to flip the page to 286. Essentialism is a uniquely American philosophy of education that began in the 1930s and 1940s as a reaction to what was seen as an overemphasis on a child-centered approach to education and a concern that students were not gaining appropriate and etiquette knowledge in schools. Essentialism has its philosophical origins in two older philosophies that draw something from each other. From Plato's idealism, it takes a view in the mind of the central tool for understanding an objective and unchanging reality as well for learning those essential ideas and knowing that we need to live well. From Aristotle's realism, it takes the tenet that the mind learns through the contract with the physical world. According to this view, to know reality, we must learn to observe and measure the physical world accurately. From our observations, we use reasoning ability to gain new knowledge. This contrasts with the perennialist view that reasoning alone can lead to truth. Essentialists believe that there exists a critical core of information and skills that an educated person must have. They are convinced that the overwhelming number of children can and should learn this body of essential material, whether or not they embrace the label essentialist. Educators and others currently supporting the adoption of a nationwide core curriculum are promoting educational essentialism. According to this view, schools should be organized to transmit this knowledge in the school effectively as possible. For essentialists, the methods used to transmit the knowledge and skill are not specifically prescribed. The focus is instead on the knowledge the students gain. In many ways, essentialism sounds like a good idea, or sounds a good deal like perennialism. Although these two views have much in common, some important differences exist between them. For instance, essentialists do not focus on intently on truths, as do perennialists. They are less concerned with the classics as being the primary repository for the worthwhile knowledge. Instead, essentialists search for what will help a person live a productive life today. In the current economic reality strongly suggests that students need to graduate from high school with computer literacy. For example, essentialists will find a place for this training in the curriculum. In this regard, essentialists are very practical. Like perennialists, essentialists look upon the many elective courses in high schools as frills, distracting students from the core knowledge that they will later need at the same time, whereas perennialists will hold fast to the great book in the storehouse of critical knowledge. Essentialists will make more room for scientific, technical, and even vocational emphasis on the curriculum. Essentialists see themselves as valuing the past but not being captured by it. The core knowledge program is a curriculum which sets out in detail what students from kindergarten to 8th grade should know. The educational philosophy behind the probable best categorized as essentialist based on the book Cultural Literacy by E.D. Hirsch Jr. The constant rich curriculum stresses academics and learning of specific knowledge, although the emphasis on important ideas and great works of the past makes it attractive and perennialist. The curriculum's focus on current literature and emphasis on science point more to its, we're going to go to 287, point towards its allegation with the Essentialist Movement during the 2012-13 school year. There were 1,230 schools in 45 states and the Director of Columbia using all part of the core knowledge sequence. For essentialists, the aim of education is to teach youth the essentials they need to live well in the modern world. To realize this goal, schools should focus on the established disciplines which are the containers of organized knowledge. As captured in the education slogan, Back to the Basics, the elementary years should concentrate on the basics such as 3 R's. These and other foundational tools are needed to gain access to the discipline knowledge which one begins to come in contact with in high school. Although some debate persists about what is essential in the curriculum, essentialists believe this is not a debate in which children can contribute fruitfully. Instead, they see the role of students as simply that of learners. Thus, an individual child's interests, motivations, and psychological states are not given great attention in deciding what is to be taught, nor do essentialists advocate a romantic view of children as being naturally good. They see the students not as evil, but rather as deficit in needing discipline and pressure to keep learning. School is viewed as a place where children come to learn and they need to know. Teachers are not guides, but authorities. The student's job is to listen and learn, given the imperfect state of students, teachers, and ingenuous finding ways to engage their imaginations and minds.